The planet Zareth 5 had once been a place of beauty. Its skies shimmered with hues of purple and gold, and rivers of crystal-clear water carved through green valleys. But today, all that beauty was gone. Smoke rose from burning cities, and the air was thick with the stench of destruction. The war had come suddenly, and the humans who had volunteered to help defend the planet were now scattered and fighting for survival. Captain Elias Kane adjusted his helmet, scanning the ruined city from a ridge. His uniform was torn, and dirt streaked his face, but his eyes were sharp and alert. He had seen many battles before, but nothing had prepared him for this. Buildings crumbled like sandcastles, and the alien attackers moved swiftly through the streets, striking without mercy. "Elias!" A voice crackled through his communicator. It was Lieutenant Rena, his second in command. "We need to cover the civilians. They're trying to escape the city's North District." Elias didn't hesitate. "Copy that. Keep your team moving, Rena. I'll handle the civilians near the river." He turned and sprinted down the slope, his boots crunching over broken glass and metal debris. As he ran, he heard faint cries. At first, he thought it was just the wind. But then he recognized the sound. It was a child. Someone was trapped. He followed the noise, dodging burning wreckage and the occasional alien scout that had wandered too far from the main battle. Finally, he saw her. A small alien girl, no older than 8, was pinned under a fallen beam. Her skin shimmered in pale blue, and her wide golden eyes were filled with fear. She struggled, but the weight of the beam made it impossible to move. "Hey, I've got..." "You?" Elias called, rushing forward. He bent down, using all his strength to lift the beam. The girl squealed in surprise but didn't move away. Finally, with a grunt and a push, the beam lifted enough for him to pull her free. She collapsed into his arms, shaking but alive. "It's okay," he said gently, brushing dust from her hair. "You're safe now. I'm here to help." The girl didn't speak, just clung to him. Elias noticed the fear in her eyes. Fear of the world she had always known, now destroyed, and perhaps fear of him too, though he meant no harm. "We'll get out of here," he promised, scanning the area for threats. The sound of explosions echoed nearby. The alien forces were advancing fast. Elias knew they couldn't linger. He tucked the girl securely under his arm and ran, dodging debris and leaping over fallen rubble. His heart pounded, but his mind was focused. Every human instinct told him he could not fail. Halfway to the evacuation zone, a squad of alien warriors appeared ahead, blocking their path. They were tall, with armored exoskeletons that glinted in the smoke-filled light. Elias stopped for a moment, calculating. There was no way around them, and running through meant certain danger. "Stay behind me," he whispered to the girl. His voice was calm, but firm. He raised his rifle and opened fire. His shots were precise, each one finding its mark. One alien fell, then another. The girl gasped but didn't cry. She was watching him, and he realized she was trying to understand him, perhaps learning that he was there to protect, not harm. The firefight was brief, but intense. Elias moved with agility and skill that only a human soldier could manage. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy, but their courage and quick thinking often made them unbeatable. With a final sprint, he cleared the last alien threat and dove into a ruined building for cover. The girl clung to him, trembling. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're going to be safe now." He looked at her closely. "What's your name?" "Lyra," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Lyra, that's a beautiful name," he said with a smile. "I'm Elias. We're going to get out of here, I promise." Elias checked his communicator. "Rena, this is Kane. I have one. Civilian, a child on my location, requesting immediate pickup." There was static, then a reply. "Copy that, Elias. Extraction team is on the way. Hold your position." Minutes felt like hours. Every shadow could hide danger. Every sound could signal an attack. Elias stayed alert, keeping Lyra behind him. Slowly, he began to tell her stories. Small things about Earth, about humans, about how brave people could be even when everything seemed lost. She listened quietly, and a small smile appeared on her face. Then the ground shook violently. A massive explosion rocked the building next. Tower. Dust filled the air and Elias stumbled, protecting Lyra. He realized that the evacuation zone itself was under attack. Their route was blocked. Panic threatened to rise, but he pushed it aside. Fear was dangerous. It made soldiers make mistakes. "We're going to find another way," he said, scanning the rubble-strewn streets. He spotted a narrow alley that led toward the river. "This way," he instructed, motioning with his head. They ran. The alien girl held on tightly, but now her grip was no longer of fear. It was trust. She had learned in these few minutes that Elias was someone who would protect her no matter what. Suddenly, a piece of metal fell from above, blocking their path. Elias swore under his breath and lifted it just in time. Lyra's eyes widened as she saw the human soldier's determination. She had been through the destruction of her city, but she had never seen someone move with such courage, putting himself in danger for someone else. Finally, they reached the riverbank. The evacuation ships hovered above, ready to take survivors. But before they could reach safety, a massive explosion occurred near the landing site. Shrapnel flew, and the wind from the blast threw Elias and Lyra off their feet. He shielded her with his body, absorbing the impact. When the smoke cleared, he realized something terrifying. The girl was gone. In the chaos, she had been swept away by the blast, carried to the side by the current of the river. Elias searched frantically, calling her name, but all he could hear was the roar of destruction around him. "Lyra! Lyra!" he shouted, his voice cracking, but the river carried her away, and in a moment of cruel fate, she disappeared from sight. He collapsed to his knees, grief and guilt washing over him. He had promised to keep her safe, and now she was gone. The sound of alarms called him back, to duty, but he could not leave the memory of her behind. He knew he had to survive, to keep fighting, hoping that somehow she was alive. Hours later, after the battle ended and the smoke cleared, Elias returned to the riverbank. The evacuation. Teams were gone and the city lay in ruins. He searched every corner, every destroyed building, but Lyra was nowhere to be found. A single golden strand of hair, shimmering blue in the light, caught his eye among the debris. He picked it up, holding it gently. "I'll find you," he whispered to the wind. "I promise, Lyra. No matter what, I will find you." Far upstream, hidden by the wreckage, Lyra clung to a piece of floating debris. She was frightened but alive. Her eyes, wide with wonder and fear, reflected the sky above. She didn't understand the world around her anymore, but she remembered the human who had saved her, his kindness, his bravery. It was a memory that would stay with her forever. As night fell over the destroyed city, both human and alien held on to the same hope, separated by distance and circumstance. One had survived to fight another day. The other had survived to remember. And in that fragile hope, a bond was formed, one that would shape the future in ways neither of them could yet imagine. For Elias Kane, it was the beginning of a lifelong search, a promise he would never break. For Lyra, it was the first step in a journey that would teach her courage, loyalty, and the meaning of true heroism. And so, the story of a human soldier and the alien girl he saved began. A story of bravery, hope, and the extraordinary power of humans to inspire even the most distant worlds. The stars above Zareth 5 shone like scattered diamonds, indifferent to the destruction below. The city lay in ruins, its once glimmering towers reduced to ash and rubble. Yet even in the midst of devastation, life had a way of continuing. Lyra floated down the river, clinging to a piece of debris, her small body battered and bruised. Hours passed before the river carried her into a hidden cove far from the battle. There, a group of alien villagers who had survived the attack found her. They were cautious at first, unfamiliar with humans and unsure about the young girl in their care. But when they saw her eyes, the golden eyes that held both fear and wonder, they understood that she was special and that she had already survived. Something extraordinary. Under the protection of the villagers, Lyra slowly recovered. Her wounds healed, but the memory of the human who had saved her lingered in her mind. She remembered the strength in his voice, the calm in his eyes, and the way he had risked everything for her safety. Those memories became a part of her, shaping the person she was becoming. Years passed. The small, frightened girl grew into a strong and capable young woman. Her skin retained its pale blue shimmer, and her eyes remained golden, reflecting both intelligence and curiosity. The villagers taught her everything they knew: how to survive in the wild, how to defend herself, and how to communicate with other species. Yet Lyra's heart never forgot Elias Kane. She often asked the elders about humans, about the strange, brave race that had saved her life. "They are clever and brave," one elder would say. "They can achieve great things, but they are not always kind. You must be careful if you ever meet them again." Lyra nodded, but refused to let caution replace hope. She had seen kindness in Elias's actions, and that was enough to inspire her. She trained herself to be strong, not just in body but in mind. She learned strategy and leadership, understanding that the universe was a dangerous place and that survival required courage and intelligence. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Elias Kane continued his service in the galactic forces. He rose quickly through the ranks, known for his bravery, his intelligence, and his unwavering sense of duty. Yet despite his success, the memory of Lyra haunted him. He never stopped thinking about the girl he had saved, or believed he had, lost. At night, when the stars shone bright above his quarters, he would look up and whisper her name, hoping against hope that she was alive somewhere. His colleagues sometimes teased him, calling him sentimental, but Elias didn't care. He had made a promise to a child in a world of chaos, and promises were sacred to humans. They were more than words. They were bonds, and breaking them was impossible for someone like Elias. Years turned into nearly a decade. Lyra had grown strong, smart, and resilient. She had learned multiple languages, advanced combat skills, and survival techniques that rivaled the most trained soldiers. But more than that, she had learned the values that humans embodied: courage, quick thinking, and compassion. Every time she faced danger, she remembered the man who had carried her through fire and explosions, and she acted as he had taught her, without fear, with a sense of purpose. One evening, as Lyra studied the stars, from a cliff above the river, she saw a distant fleet moving through space, ships with human markings. Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be him? Could Elias Kane be here, somewhere in that fleet? She did not hesitate. Lyra decided she would find him, no matter the distance, no matter the dangers. She gathered supplies, sharpened her weapons, and prepared a small ship she had been maintaining in secret. She knew the galaxy was vast, filled with pirates, rogue AI, and alien mercenaries, but she had spent years preparing for this moment. The thought of seeing Elias again gave her courage she had never known before. As she launched into space, the stars stretched out around her like a sea of light. She set coordinates based on intelligence reports she had gathered, reports of human activity near the outer rim. The journey would be long, but Lyra was not afraid. She had faced death and survived. She had endured the loss of her home, yet she carried hope in her heart. That hope was stronger than fear. Meanwhile, on a distant space station, Elias received a routine report from reconnaissance drones. The report was unremarkable at first, just standard readings from the outer rim. But then he noticed a signature, a life form he could not ignore. It was unfamiliar, but it moved with intelligence, purpose, and courage. He felt an inexplicable pull, a connection he could not explain. "Lieutenant Rena," he said into his communicator, "prepare a team to investigate a vessel approaching the sector. It may be carrying survivors of Zareth 5. Rena's voice sounded curious. "Survivors? After all these years? Are you sure, Captain?" Elias didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared at the data, studying the life-form signature. Something about it felt familiar. A memory flashed in his mind. A small blue figure, golden eyes, the quiet trust in those eyes as he carried her to safety. Could it really be her? Could the girl he had lost so many years ago still be alive? He stood in silence for a moment, his heart beating faster than usual. Humans were often praised for their courage in battle, But it was their hope, their persistence that defined them. Elias felt that now, that same human trait pulling him forward. He would see for himself. Lyra's journey was not easy. She encountered asteroid fields that threatened to tear her ship apart, space pirates who tried to steal her supplies, and systems of rogue AI that attacked any unauthorized vessels. Each time she used her skills, her knowledge and the lessons she had learned from both her alien mentors and the memory of Elias's courage. She was fast, clever, and resourceful, a true combination of alien training and human inspiration. Days turned into weeks. Lyra's supplies dwindled, her ship sustained damage, and the loneliness of space pressed heavily on her. Yet she never faltered. She often whispered to herself, telling stories of Earth, of humans, and of Elias's bravery. Each word strengthened her, reminding her why she had started this journey. She was not just seeking reunion, she was carrying the values Elias had instilled in her: courage, determination, and hope. Finally, after months of navigating the vast and dangerous void, Lyra's sensors picked up a human outpost near the edge of the sector. The sight of it made her heart race. She had done it. She had reached the place where Elias might be. Yet, even as she approached, caution guided her actions. She knew that humans were intelligent and unpredictable, and she needed to ensure her safety while finding him. She parked her small vessel behind an asteroid and observed. The outpost was bustling with activity. Ships moved in and out, humans spoke rapidly, and machines hummed with energy. And there, walking across the landing platform, was a figure she recognized instantly: Elias Kane. Time seemed to stop. Lyra's golden eyes filled with tears as she watched the man who had saved her all those years ago. He had aged slightly, his uniform marked with the insignia of command, but his presence was unmistakable. Strong, determined, and still radiating, the same courage that had once carried her to safety. Lyra knew the risks. She could not simply run to him. She needed a plan. She observed the guards, the patrols, and the routines. She studied every detail, preparing herself for the moment she would finally reunite with him. But even as she planned, she felt an undeniable warmth in her chest, a mixture of excitement, fear, and hope. Elias, on the other hand, felt something too. As he walked across the platform, a strange feeling tugged at him. He couldn't explain it, but somewhere deep in his mind he sensed that someone from his past was near. Perhaps it was hope, or perhaps it was fate guiding him. Humans often relied on instinct, and this was one of those moments where instinct spoke louder than reason. And so, after years of separation, both human and alien prepared for a reunion that would change the course of their lives once again. One had survived, trained, and grown stronger. The other had remembered, hoped, and persisted. The galaxy was vast, filled with danger and uncertainty. But for Lyra and Elias, the bond they shared was unbreakable, a connection forged in courage, trust, and the extraordinary power of human heroism. The stage was set. Soon, human and alien would meet again, and their story would continue stronger than ever before. Lyra had finally reached the human outpost. From her hidden ship, she watched the movements of guards, soldiers, and patrol drones. The sight of Elias Kane walking across the landing platform filled her with hope, but she also knew that rushing forward without a plan could bring disaster. Humans were cautious about strangers, and she could not risk being captured before she had the chance to speak to him. For days, she stayed hidden among the asteroids, repairing her ship with what little supplies she had left. Every night she stared at the outpost from a distance, whispering Elias's name, remembering his voice and the promise in his eyes when he saved her as a child. But fate rarely allowed peace for long. On the fourth night, her sensors blared an alarm. A group of pirate ships had entered the sector. Their vessels were patched together with stolen parts, their weapons powerful but unstable. Pirates in the outer rim cared little for honor. They hunted anything they could capture, cargo, ships, or living beings. Lyra cursed under her breath. She powered down her ship, hoping the asteroid field would hide her. But pirates were skilled, hunters. Within minutes, one of the vessels moved dangerously close. "This is bad," she whispered, gripping the controls. Her heart raced, but her mind stayed clear. She remembered Elias's courage in the ruined city of Zareth 5, how he had faced impossible odds with calm determination. She told herself she must do the same. The pirate ship's scanners swept the asteroid field. Lyra knew she had two choices: remain hidden and hope they passed, or move and risk being chased. She chose the human way, boldness. She ignited her engines and blasted forward. The pirates spotted her immediately. "Small vessel detected." Their comms echoed through the void. "Disable and capture." Laser fire cut across the darkness, forcing Lyra to weave and dive between asteroids. Her small ship was lighter and faster, but it was damaged from her long journey. Sparks flew as enemy shots grazed her hull. Alarm screamed, but Lyra gritted her teeth. "Think, Lyra, think," she whispered to herself. Then she remembered Elias's words from years ago. "We'll find another way. Humans always found another way." She lured the pirates deeper into the asteroid field, flying dangerously close to spinning rocks and sharp debris. Her hands shook, but her focus never wavered. The pirates followed recklessly, their larger ships unable to maneuver as tightly. With a sharp turn, Lyra led them toward a cluster of asteroids locked in unstable orbit. She fired her small plasma cannon at one of the rocks. The explosion shattered, the asteroid sending shards flying in all directions. The fragments slammed into the pirate vessels, ripping through their hulls. 2 pirate ships were destroyed instantly. The others broke off, retreating to avoid further damage. Lyra let out a shaky breath, her body trembling with adrenaline. She had survived not by strength but by daring, just as Elias had taught her through his example. But the battle had left her ship nearly crippled. Smoke filled the cockpit, systems blinked with warnings, and oxygen levels dropped. Lyra knew she could not stay hidden anymore. She set her ship on a direct course for the human outpost. At the same time, Elias Kane stood in the command center of the outpost. Reports of pirate activity had reached him, and he studied the screens with narrowed eyes. "Captain," Lieutenant Rena reported, "we're detecting a damaged vessel entering our airspace. Small, alien design, no identification codes." Elias's chest tightened. Could it be? Could this be the same life form he had sensed days earlier? "Bring it in carefully," he ordered. "No weapons fire unless absolutely necessary." The docking bay prepared as Lyra's ship limped toward it. Sparks trailed behind the vessel as it descended shakily onto the landing pad. Human soldiers surrounded it, weapons ready, but Elias motioned for them to hold. The ship's hatch opened, slowly. Out stepped Lyra, her pale blue skin glimmering in the artificial lights, her golden eyes wide with exhaustion, yet burning with determination. She stumbled slightly, but forced herself to stand tall. For Elias, time froze. He recognized her instantly. She was no longer the small child he had carried through fire and smoke, but her eyes, those golden eyes, were the same. "Lyra," he whispered, almost disbelieving. Lyra's gaze locked onto him. Her lips trembled and tears welled in her eyes. "Elias," she said softly, her voice filled with years of longing. The soldiers looked at each other in confusion, but Elias stepped forward. He removed his helmet, revealing his face. "You're alive," he said, his voice breaking with relief. "I thought I lost you that day." Lyra took a shaky step toward him. "You saved me. You gave me hope. I've carried that hope every day since, and I swore I would find you." Elias felt a rare emotion, tears forming in his eyes. He reached out and Lyra collapsed into his arms. For a moment, the galaxy and its dangers disappeared. It was only the two of them, human and alien, soldier and survivor, reunited after years of separation. But peace never lasted long. Alarms blared across the outpost. "Incoming attack," a soldier shouted. "Pirate reinforcements, multiple ships inbound." Elias held Lyra firmly, then looked into her eyes. "Can you fight?" Lyra wiped her tears and straightened. I survived pirates, mercenaries, and half the galaxy to get here. Yes, I can fight. Elias smiled faintly. That's the spirit. The attack came swiftly. Pirate ships descended on the outpost, their weapons blazing. Humans scrambled into defensive positions, while automated turrets lit up the skies with laser fire. The battle was fierce, but the pirates had numbers on their side. Elias and Lyra fought side by side. He led with human strategy. Quick orders, clever traps, and calculated risks. Lyra fought with alien grace, moving swiftly, her blade and plasma pistol striking with precision. Together, they were unstoppable. At one point, a pirate squad cornered a group of young recruits. Lyra rushed forward, shielding them, her movements sharp and fearless. Elias covered her with rifle fire, his steady aim cutting down enemies one after another. The recruits stared in awe. "Who is she?" one whispered. "A survivor," Elias replied without hesitation. "And our ally." The battle raged for hours, but slowly, the humans pushed the pirates back. Their teamwork, their courage, and their adaptability turned the tide. Finally, the remaining pirate ships retreated into the void, leaving wreckage behind. The outpost erupted in cheers. Soldiers hugged each other, celebrating their victory. But Elias's eyes were only on Lyra. She stood among the wreckage, her chest heaving, her eyes glowing with determination. "You were amazing," he said, walking up to her. Lyra smiled faintly. "I only did what you taught me." I remembered. "Your courage, Elias. That's what kept me alive all these years." He looked at her with pride. "No, Lyra. You did that yourself. You've become stronger than I ever imagined." Lyra lowered her gaze, humbled. "But it was you who gave me the strength to believe. Humans. You inspire others, even when you don't realize it." The moment was quiet, powerful. Around them, the outpost bustled with activity. But for Elias and Lyra, it was a moment of connection, of recognition. They had survived battles, pain, and separation. Now reunited, they knew their journey together was only beginning. That night, as the stars glowed outside the outpost windows, Elias and Lyra sat together in the command room. "Tell me everything," Elias said softly. "What happened to you? After the river?" Lyra told him her story, how she had been rescued by villagers, how she trained, how she faced dangers across the galaxy. She spoke of the nights she looked at the stars, whispering his name, holding on to the hope that he was still alive. Elias listened silently, his chest heavy with emotion. When she finished, he placed a hand on hers. "You're here now. That's what matters." Lyra nodded. "And I'm not leaving again." Outside, the galaxy remained vast and dangerous. More battles would come, more trials to face. But for now, in this small moment, human and alien sat side by side, bound by courage, hope, and the unbreakable bond formed years ago on a burning world. And together, they prepared for whatever would come next. The battle with the pirates had ended, but the echoes of gunfire still lingered in the minds of everyone on the human outpost. The landing platforms were scarred with blackened metal, smoke rose from shattered turrets, and the faint smell of burning fuel filled the air. Engineers rushed to repair damaged systems, soldiers stood guard at every entrance, and medics carried the wounded on stretchers. Amidst the chaos, Elias Kane stood tall, his uniform scorched, but his spirit steady. He had fought many battles, but this one was different. This time he had not fought alone. By his side had been Lyra, the alien girl he had once saved, now a capable warrior in her own right. He glanced across the platform where she stood. Her blue skin glimmered faintly in the artificial lights, her golden eyes sharp yet soft when they met his. She looked older, stronger, and wiser. But in those eyes he still saw the child he had once carried to safety. "Captain?" Lieutenant Rena approached, interrupting his thoughts. "Scanners confirm the pirates have retreated, but—" She hesitated, her expression grim. "But what?" Elias asked, his voice calm but firm. Rena held out a datapad. "Intercepted communications. The pirates were not acting alone. Someone else is behind this. They were ordered to target us to test our defenses. Elias frowned, his instincts sharpening, which means a larger force may be coming. Lyra stepped closer, listening carefully. I've seen this pattern before, she said. Pirates, mercenaries, even rogue militias, they've been working under someone's command. A shadow fleet. Elias looked at her with interest. You've been tracking them? For years, Lyra replied. I wanted to find you, but on my journey I discovered something bigger. Someone out there is preparing for war again, and they are watching humans very closely. The words hung in the air like a storm cloud. Elias knew the galaxy was never truly peaceful, but the idea of another war made his heart heavy. Still, he looked at Lyra and strength filled him. She had survived because of hope, and now she was bringing him vital knowledge. Then we'll face it together, Elias said firmly. Later that night, the outpost was quieter. The soldiers rested, the wounded slept in the medbay, and the stars above glittered against the black void. In the command room, Elias sat across from Lyra. Between them lay a holographic map of the sector, glowing faintly with clusters of light marking known fleets and stations. Lyra pointed at one of the outer rim systems. Here. I intercepted coded transmissions weeks ago. Whoever is leading the pirates has a base there. Elias studied the map, then looked at her. You've been through a lot to get here, haven't you? Lyra smiled faintly, though her eyes held sadness. Every day I remembered Zareth 5. I remembered the fire, the destruction, and you. I thought if I became strong enough, if I followed the courage you showed me, I would find you again. And now I have. Elias leaned back, his chest tight, with emotion. Lyra, I thought I lost you that day. For years I carried the guilt of not being able to keep my promise. You didn't fail me, she said softly. You gave me the strength to survive. You were the reason I didn't give up. Humans. You always keep moving forward, even when everything seems lost. I wanted to be like that. Their eyes met, and for a moment, silence spoke louder than words. The bond between them was undeniable. Then let's keep moving forward, Elias said at last. Together. The next day, the outpost prepared for the possibility of another attack. Ships were repaired, defenses reinforced, and scouts sent out to monitor the sector. Lyra joined the humans in their preparations. At first, some soldiers looked at her with suspicion, uncertain about an alien in their midst. But when they saw her skill, how she repaired weapons with precision, how she trained with both blade and blaster, and how she moved with the same determination as their captain, they began to respect her. Where did you learn to fight like that? One recruit asked during a training session. From many teachers, Lyra replied with a smile. But the first lesson I ever learned was from a human soldier. He showed me that courage is not about strength. It is about protecting others, no matter the cost. The recruits nodded, inspired. Elias, watching from a distance, felt pride swell in his chest. Lyra was not only strong, she was becoming a leader, just as he had always hoped. That evening, as the suns of the nearby planet dipped below the horizon, an alarm sounded again. This time it was not pirates. Unidentified fleet approaching, a technician shouted. Large formation, at least 20 ships. The command center erupted in activity. Elias strode to the central console, his voice steady. All hands, to battle stations. Activate defense grid. Lyra stood beside him, her golden eyes narrowing as she studied the incoming fleet. Their ships were sleek, black, and heavily armed. They moved in perfect formation, too disciplined to be pirates. They're not raiders, she said. This is the shadow fleet I told you about. Elias nodded grimly. Then we're about to find out who's behind them. The attack came with brutal force. Enemy ships fired volleys of plasma torpedoes, shaking the outpost. Human cannons returned fire, while squadrons of fighters launched into the void. The stars lit up with explosions as the two forces clashed. Elias coordinated the defense with sharp, precise commands. Squad Beta, flank left. Gamma, cover the medbay. Rena, with me, we're holding the command deck. Lyra fought alongside, the soldiers moving through the corridors as enemy boarding parties stormed the outpost. She fought fiercely, her blade flashing in the dim light, her blaster shots precise. Soldiers who had doubted her now followed her lead, inspired by her courage. At one point, she and Elias found themselves back-to-back in a narrow corridor, surrounded by armored attackers. Just like old times, Elias muttered. Lyra smirked. Except this time I can fight too. They moved as one, Elias's steady aim cutting down enemies from a distance, Lyra's swift strikes disabling those who closed in. Together they cleared the corridor and pressed forward. But the battle was not easily won. The Shadow Fleet pressed harder, wave after wave of enemies flooding the outpost. Explosions rocked the station, systems failed, and oxygen levels dropped in several sectors. In the chaos, Lyra caught sight of a commander among the enemy forces, a tall figure with dark armor, giving orders through a command console. She realized, this was no random attack, this was a test, a probe of human strength. They're measuring you, she shouted to Elias over the comms. They want to see how humans fight, how far you can go, Elias growled. Then we'll show them. The battle dragged into the night. Finally, with clever tactics and relentless courage, the humans managed to cripple the enemy's flagship. Flames erupted from its hull, forcing the Shadow Fleet to retreat. The outpost, though battered, still stood. Cheers erupted among the soldiers, but Elias and Lyra did not celebrate. They stood in the command center, staring at the retreating ships. This was just the beginning, Lyra said quietly. They'll be back, stronger. Elias nodded. Then so will we. And next time we'll be ready. He turned to her, his voice softening. Lyra, we survived today because of you. Your courage reminded my people of what we're fighting for. You've become more than the girl I once saved. You've become a symbol. Lyra's eyes shone with emotion. A symbol of humans, she whispered. Of the hope you gave me. Elias smiled faintly. No. A symbol of us. Human and alien. Together. That night, as silence settled over the damaged outpost, Lyra and Elias stood by the observation window gazing at the stars. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, filled with threats and uncertainty. But Lyra no longer felt afraid. She stood beside the man who had saved her life, the man who had inspired her to survive and grow stronger. And now, together, they would face whatever came next. Elias, she said softly, I think this is only the beginning of our journey. He nodded, his eyes fixed on the horizon of stars. Then let's begin. The outpost was scarred but alive. Repairs continued day and night. Soldiers worked with renewed determination, and every human on board knew the Shadow Fleet would return. Yet, there was no despair. Instead, a quiet fire burned in their hearts. They had faced the storm and survived. Captain Elias Kane stood on the command deck, his uniform patched but his presence stronger than ever. Around him, officers and engineers coordinated, preparing for the inevitable. At his side stood Lyra, her golden eyes scanning the holographic map that showed enemy activity across the galaxy. They're spreading, she said softly. Every week, new systems report raids, blockades, and disappearances. The Shadow Fleet grows bolder. Elias nodded grimly. They want to divide us, to make us feel weak and small. But we won't give them that victory. He turned to his crew, his voice carrying across the deck. Humans have always faced impossible odds. We were told the galaxy was too big, too dangerous, too advanced for us. And yet here we are, still standing. We will not fight alone. We will show the stars that humanity stands with its allies, and together we will win. The soldiers cheered, their voices echoing with hope. Lyra felt her chest swell with pride. This was why she had searched for him. Elias was not just a soldier, he was a beacon. The call for allies over the next weeks, Elias and Lyra traveled across nearby systems. They spoke with leaders of neutral colonies, traders, and alien clans, who had suffered under the Shadow Fleet's growing power. At first, many were hesitant. The Shadow Fleet seemed unstoppable, and few wanted to risk drawing their wrath. But Lyra's words carried weight. She spoke not as a stranger, but as one who had lived under terror and survived because of human courage. In one gathering, a council of alien elders listened as she addressed them. Her voice was steady, filled with emotion. Years ago, I was only a child when fire rained from the sky. My world was burning, my people scattered, and I believed there was no hope. Then a human soldier lifted me from the flames. He gave me his strength, his courage, and his promise that I was not alone. Today I stand before you because of that promise, and I tell you this: the humans will not bow to fear. If you fight with them, you will not stand alone either. The council chamber fell silent. Then slowly, one elder rose. If humanity dares to resist, then so shall we. From that moment, more and more voices joined. Small fleets pledged. Ships, colonies promised supplies. Even scattered pirate bands, tired of being crushed under the Shadow Fleet, offered their aid. A fragile alliance began to take shape. The strategy back at the human outpost, the new alliance gathered. For the first time, humans, aliens, and even former enemies stood side by side, united by a single purpose. In the command center, Elias, Lyra, and Lieutenant Rena studied the holographic map. The Shadow Fleet has a command station here. Rena pointed to a dark star system surrounded by asteroid fields, heavily fortified with at least 40 ships guarding it. We can't match them in numbers, Elias said. But we don't have to. If we strike their command station, we cut off their control. Their fleet will scatter. Lyra stepped forward. There is a weak point. Their station draws energy from the asteroid belt's core. If we can overload that energy source, the station will collapse. It's dangerous, Rena warned. The entire belt could explode. Then we'll make sure we're gone before it happens, Elias said firmly. The plan was set. The Alliance would launch a diversionary attack with their fleets, drawing out the shadow ships while a smaller strike team infiltrated the command station to disable the core. Elias, of course, would lead the team. Lyra insisted on joining him. You'll need me, she said. I know their systems. I've studied their codes, and besides, her eyes softened. I won't let you face this alone. Elias gave her a long look, then nodded. Together. The battle begins. The day of the final stand arrived. The Alliance fleet gathered in the dark void, hundreds of ships from dozens of worlds. Their weapons gleamed, their engines roared, and their banners flew. For once they were not scattered or afraid, they were united. Elias stood on the bridge of the lead human cruiser. His voice carried through the comms to every ship. Today, we face an enemy who believes we are weak. They think fear will break us, but they do not understand humanity. We do not break, we endure. We do not bow, we rise. And we are not alone. Together we will show the galaxy what it means to fight for freedom. The fleets roared in answer. Then with a single command they surged forward. The battle exploded in fire and fury. Shadow Fleet warships clashed with Alliance fighters. Plasma torpedoes streaked across the stars, and the black void lit up with explosions. Amid the chaos, Elias led the strike team, himself, Lyra, Rena, and a small squad, aboard a stealth shuttle. Dodging enemy fire, they slipped through the asteroid belt and landed on the surface of the Shadow Fleet's command station. The infiltration inside. The station was a maze of dark corridors, glowing red with warning lights. Armored soldiers patrolled the halls, their weapons ready. Moving like shadows, the strike team advanced. Elias's steady hand guided them. Lyra's knowledge of enemy systems led the way, and Rena covered their flanks. At one point, they were cornered by a squad of enemy guards. Elias raised his rifle, but Lyra placed a hand on his arm. She whispered something in her language and stepped forward, speaking to the guards in the Shadow Fleet's own tongue. For a moment, the guards hesitated, confused by the presence of one of their own kind. That moment was all the team needed. With swift precision, they disabled the guards and pressed on. Finally, they reached the core chamber. At its center pulsed a massive crystalline reactor glowing with unstable energy. This is it, Lyra said, her fingers flying over the console. I can overload it, but we'll only have minutes to escape. Elias nodded. Do it. As Lyra worked, alarms blared. Enemy soldiers poured into the chamber. The strike team fought fiercely, blasters flashing, blades clashing, the air thick with smoke and sparks. Lyra's hands moved faster. Sweat glistened on her brow. Almost there. Elias fought like a wall of iron, protecting her from every side. He remembered that day years ago, carrying her through fire. Now she was carrying them all with her courage. At last, the core shuddered, its glow turning unstable. It's done, Lyra shouted. Move, Elias ordered. The escape. The team raced through the collapsing corridors as the station shook violently. Explosions ripped through the walls, flames burst from vents, and debris crashed around them. At one point, a section of the ceiling collapsed, pinning Rena beneath rubble. Elias rushed to her, straining with all his strength to free her. Lyra joined him, and together they pulled her out. Go, Rena coughed, pushing them forward. Don't stop now. They sprinted into the shuttle bay just as the entire station began to collapse. Jumping aboard, they launched into space, racing against time. Behind them, the core went critical. The asteroid belt lit up in a blinding explosion. The shockwave ripped through the Shadow Fleet, destroying ships and scattering the survivors. On the battlefield, the Alliance cheered as enemy ships broke formation and fled. The Shadow Fleet was shattered, the victory. When the strike team returned, the Alliance celebrated across the stars. Humanity and its allies had stood together and won. In the aftermath, leaders gathered to sign a new pact of unity. For the first time in galactic history, humans were recognized not as newcomers but as equals, respected and admired for their courage. Elias stood quietly at the edge of the ceremony, watching. He had never fought for glory, only to protect. Yet now he realized his people had gained something greater than victory. They had gained trust. Beside him, Lyra smiled. You've done it, Elias. Humanity has shown the galaxy who they are. No, Elias said softly, looking at her. We've done it. Together. Lyra's golden eyes shone. When you saved me years ago, I thought it was the end of my world, but it was the beginning of something greater. You showed me hope, and now that hope has spread to many others. Elias reached out, resting a hand gently on her shoulder. The galaxy is wide, Lyra. There will be more battles, more challenges, but as long as we stand together, there's nothing we can't face. She nodded. Together. Epilogue. Weeks later, the stars were peaceful again. The Alliance fleet patrolled the borders, rebuilding what had been lost. Humans and aliens shared knowledge, traded openly, and worked side by side. In the quiet of the observation deck, Elias and Lyra stood together, looking out at the endless void. What now? She asked softly. Elias smiled faintly. Now we build, not just ships and stations. We build trust, friendship, and a future where no one stands alone. Lyra's heart felt lighter than ever. She had been a child of fire and loss. Now, she was a woman of hope and unity, and beside her stood the human soldier who had once saved her, who now shared with her a bond that no war could break. The stars stretched before them, endless and full of promise, and together, they stepped forward into the future.